I'm here.
Beware, your host, Jonathan Holmes.
Oh, DJ Dogbone, you really caught me off guard there doing your best Sinistar
impression.
From the Sub Holmes days. James, did we first meet on Sub Holmes? Is that when it was, you
sure
think?
Did, 12 years ago.
Oh my goodness, amazing. So for folks who don't know, James, and I am always worried I'm going to pronounce everybody's last name wrong, even my own. I do it Montagna. Montagna?
It's Montagna.
I thought so. Oh,
yeah, Montagna's okay too, but you got it right the first time 12 years ago, and you got it right again today. Thank you.
I would not at all be surprised if I said that exact same thing 12 years ago, because
I think you did.
So when James and I first met, he was directing the Adventure Time game for the DS and 3DS. Hey, Ice King, why'd you steal our garbage? Is that when it was, you think? That's how my brain is dating it. Now James is back on this podcast, the Yeah Podcast, to talk about a game he made 5 years ago, which is still, in my opinion, one of the preeminent Switch experiences. If you want to experience what the Switch is in terms of a passion project and not just a piece of machinery, and frankly, the Switch, I think, has mixed opinions about it compared to prior Nintendo consoles. Some people said, well, it's an amazing piece of hardware. That's kind of blanketly understood. But in terms of whether it has the quirky idiosyncrasies, the passion, the frankly weirdness that the Wii U, the 3DS had, mixed opinions about that. If you ever wanted your Switch to be as weird and wonderful as a 3DS or a Wii U, Vitamin Connection is the game you have to get, because it takes advantage of the console's quirks and its unique personality in a way that, in my opinion, few, if no, other games have. And it has some yes on the soundtrack.
Yeah. Here we go, yeah. Give it to me now. DJ Dogbone and a young Juan. Bringing you a treat, we got it going on. Pulling on the leash, we pulling up on y'all lawn. Tail wag, mic check, ears up, we drop bombs. Give me something tasty, I can get you dancing. Table floor, doggy bowl, I don't need a fancy. Jump up on your hind legs, let me see you clap hands. When you hear the beat drop, get your tail wagging. Now let me see you bounce for a minute. If I see a mic drop, I'ma run and come get it. If you meet a nice dog, then you better just pet it. Cause it ain't a party if a doggy ain't in it. I'm a small boy, but I got some big paws. Leader of the pack, we just a bunch of big dogs. We got Patch and Nugget, Brooklyn, Nisha, Pee-wee, and Drew. DB, Young One, we the canine crew.
Your very best friend from head to tail's end. Every moment I'm with you is the best of my life. And though I play it cool, dog, I know what it's cool for. As long as the sun shines, I'll stay by your side.
Yo, if my dogs are out there, let me see you put your paws in the air. Wag your tails. Yeah.
I think some even done by
Let's
DJ
go.
Dogbone. That's not actually the real DJ Dogbone. I'm sorry to say. That is our preeminent.
Unfortunately, I'm just a DJ Dogbone impersonator.
That's
Maybe the world's best.
Could be the world's first. I hope not.
World's first.
But definitely one of the world's best. DJ Dogbone. And when I saw Dogbone for the first time in the game, I wasn't surprised, because it's such a James thing. You've worked at WayForward for a while, James, and each of your games brings with it your personality. WayForward, a big, successful company. Each director at WayForward has a unique flavor to them, too. And not everyone may notice because they don't dig deep into it. But if you play through James's gameography, you'll see a running theme of like smart, quirky, wacky ladies. You'll see things that feel like they might have come out of the 90s or the 2000s. DJ Dogbone is clearly like listens to PaRappa, maybe even looks up to PaRappa, is definitely in that school of thought. This brand of edge pushing that you don't see as much in games today, where I think how much cartoon personality mixed with a integration with mainstream culture and mainstream music like rap music was really happening in the PS1, PS2, Dreamcast era. Not as much now, and you brought so much of that with Vitamin Connection. So before I talk more about you, and don't, half hour will be gone by and you'll have just gotten some nods in and not had a chance to say anything. I apologize for that. Tell us about, why did you come up with this idea for Vitamin Connection specifically for the Switch?
Well, first of all, thank you for all your kind words. That's like, I'm really moved by that. Vitamin Connections, a really special game in my opinion. And I hope if people have never heard of it, like what even is this? Please go check it out. If you have a Nintendo Switch, I think many, many people do. It's one of the best-selling video game consoles of all time. It's on the eShop and you can buy it. And there's even a free demo. So you can even check that out. So Vitamin Connection, I guess you kind of want to know how it all started, huh?
Yeah. I've played the game, of course. I know about the creative team, Lindsay Collins, Linsbot, who worked with me on the ill-fated teenage Pokemon cartoon. She just, like, in her spare time, she didn't even ask for any money. I, like, insisted on trying to buy her lunch or something. She's like, forget about it. I just doodled some Pokemon, sent them to you. I then sent them to animators, and they, like, brought it to life in a 10-episode show. So I am biased towards Vitamin Connection for that reason, but even if Vitamin Connection had a completely different artist, I would still be fully taken with its underlying style and its intent to delight and surprise people at every turn. So that feeling would still be there. But Lindsay, near and dear to my heart, did amazing art. So I know a little bit about the team. I don't know a ton about what inspired it to happen in the first place.
Sure, and I can touch on that. And I will say I knew in my mind immediately at the outset it had to have Lindsay Collins artwork. In my brain, it's just what I pictured immediately, and it wouldn't be the same without it. I couldn't picture a Vitamin Connection without her artwork. It's so integral to the experience. But we were actually making various demos to propose to Nintendo, like, hey, let's work together. And the thought was, okay, well, if we're gonna propose a game like to Nintendo, I wanted to do something that takes full advantage of the Switch in every way, like a love letter to the Switch. So we had this development hardware, and I'm seeing all the capabilities of things it can do, things that not a lot of games use, like the motion IR camera on the Joy-Con right. And just thinking about, okay, how can we really take this thing and use it in a unique way? And just kind of like bouncing around the studio by myself late at night, holding Joy-Con and like picturing the ways I like might like to use them. And I just got this thought in my mind, well, there's two of them. You can have two people play together, but why do they need to be doing the same thing? I had this thought in my brain, like just this fantasy in my mind, like, what if I could drive on the freeway and like I'm in the driver's seat and someone's in the passenger seat, and I have the steering wheel, and my friend in the passenger seat has the gas and the brake, and it's like, okay, now we have to drive on the freeway and get to our destination and not die. How fun would that be? Also extremely dangerous.
But in the world of video games, of course, danger has no real consequence other than the frustration of maybe dying as you learn how to play. And that key element of the Switch that it was initially marketed so hard was like, take the Joy-Cons off, give one to your friend, go to a picnic table. Like, it used to be about bringing people in a way that I think the Wii U also thought about, but whether you've got the gamepad or a Wii remote is a hugely different experience. It's separate but equal and combining and cooperating with the Switch that at the outside of the Switch's release was something I think a lot of people were excited about. Few people took advantage of it in the same way. When you saw the Joy-Cons, did you think they looked like vitamins?
Not necessarily. You know, back in the days we were starting to think about this, we had the development hardware and the Joy-Cons were just black.
Interesting.
It was different visually, but I think it was the sort of thing where back in 2017 Switch, it was all about this concept of sharing the joy. Like you have a Joy-Con, and you give the other to somebody else, and you play together. That evolved. It wasn't lost entirely, but that over time evolved to encompass more and more, and just like ways to play. And you have a lot of people just using it as a handheld, strict. But I thought emphasizing the multiplayer could be a really fun angle, and this like driving like fantasy I had in my head. I wanted to experience this in my lifetime, but in a safe way. So why not make it? So
Yeah.
the as far as the idea of them being Vitamins? Gosh, I knew the concept of what I wanted to do after that car idea, but then I flattened it out. Okay, well, let's make it a 2D game. And it's like, okay, I have one person navigating, like moving around, and I have one person maybe even like tilting to angle it. And I thought, what if it's asymmetrical? They hold the Joy-Con in different like orientations. That would make it so it's a really distinctly different experience. So one person can play with one hand, move this object or ship or whatever around. The other person is like tilting, and then I incorporate. All right, well, one person's firing, and then one person's aiming. So it's like really this like split responsibilities where you need to coordinate with each other what you want to do if you want to do it very successfully, or you could just kind of just barge in and do the best you can, and hopefully it works out. And there's some joy and fun in that too. So
Yeah.
I wanted the fun of this game not only to take place on the TV, but here in real space between two human beings. Like move the fun center out of the screen just a little bit, And I thought, okay, so this idea can work. What the heck is this? Like how do we like turn this into a real like game? And I think it all hit me like a bolt of lightning. Oh, they're vitamins and it's inside somebody's body and you're fighting pathogens. I can't explain to you why. It's not like there was some logic behind it. It was just like I think in the span of a minute, the idea was like settled in my brain all of a sudden.
Wow. Uh-huh. And the main characters are boy and girl, vitamins, collaborators. Again, designed by Lindsay Collins, and they're sort of colored, themed around the eventual Joy-Con design that's known, the red and blue Joy-Con.
Yeah, sort of. The right one eventually we turned it to more of like magenta color to have its like own like branding identity for the game, and I guess it sort of fits in this binary boy girl sort of like presentation in a way that I hope is like okay. But I think you have Vita Boy and Mina Girl are the characters, and it's like vitamins and minerals. And so you have these two characters, and you explore through the world as these two. We refer to them as the Vitamin Kids. They're heroes that don't like speak to each other. Sorry, they don't speak verbally with like VO, but they're communicating with each other, like in theory, like as you as the players are embodying them. And in the world, even though they don't speak with a voice, everyone can like understand what they're saying, kind of thing. So silent protagonists, but they're actually like saying things, and your mind will fill in the blanks. Because I really wanted the player to embody these characters if they have their own personality, like Vita Boy, he's got a attitude. It's like that's not me. So
Yeah, that's right. It's hard to feel fully connected, I think, with a really chatty protagonist because it's like they're talking to me. Yeah, it's a personal opinion. I love the Katamari games, the Animal Crossing games, where you're reading text, but you're just hearing like mana, 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 or like a record scratch or something. And it allows you to kind of fill in that blank subconsciously without realizing you're doing it. That said, there's plenty of vocals on the soundtrack. There's plenty of words, rap, singing. This soundtrack is monumental. It's massive, and I remember it coming out. If I remember correctly, it was around when Jake Kaufman, who's worked with WayForward many times, had reached like a new level in his career where he wasn't someone who was making music that people loved, but people didn't know his name. He was becoming like talked about quite a bit. And you managed to snag him for quite a bit of the soundtrack, if I remember correctly.
a handful of tracks, actually. Yeah, just a handful, but it was awesome to be able to work with him. I think it's that it might be the last one that we had the opportunity to work on together. It was a time when he was like in-house at WayForward to transitioning to not being in-house at WayForward. But it was awesome to, I think some of the very first tracks were from Jake Kaufman, and those are incredible tracks. And then we expanded the soundtrack to be one of the most ambitious WayForward soundtracks of all time.
Yeah.
From there, we invited so many different artists. I mean, Tommy Pedrini, I think, did the most tracks and just out of this world stuff. We had Maddie Lim. There's so many I could go on and on. We had a lot of guest artists that did maybe one or two tracks, and yeah, you're right. Even though the main characters, don't have like a voice that you can hear, the game is constantly having voices play at you. I think part of that was just I wanted the game to feel very dynamic and alive, and my hope was that like someone would like hear this game being played and like, what the heck am I hearing? Like, what is that? Like, just and then be curious about it, drawn in. It's always, the game is always talking at you or singing at you at any given time.
Yeah, yeah, it's overflowing with this particular James feeling where you can't, as I've known your games, you can't just be like, I'm gonna make a normal video game. I'm just gonna, you jump, you fight the boss. You with Hey Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage too? It ends with like a full original song, if I remember correctly. Was it Christina who sang?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Rainicorn song.
yeah, that is like you didn't have to go that hard, as the kids say, and that's continually what you're doing. When people saw Vitamin Connection, I think they probably thought 2D graphics, a clean, simple style. It's probably not going to have a all new fictional dog rap group in it. that in the game they're treated like celebrities. Like you feel like there's a lore. You can imagine going through a back catalog, which may exist. I don't know. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg. The main characters have like rivals, and it goes into like a Sentai sort of, for people who don't know Sentai, like Power Rangers vibe, where you feel like there's this kind of a deep backstory to what's gone on between these superhero characters that look similar but are different. And all in about a 3.5 hour or so, 4 hour long game. So it's not going to like steal you away and you have to get fully absorbed in all that lore forever. You can have fun with it in an afternoon with friends and family. I've never tried playing it by myself, actually. Is that possible? People can do that, right?
You can play it solo. There's a whole separate save file for solo, so you can progress through the game and like not disrupt your like two people playing together progress. And it still holds up. It's a very different way to experience it. I find playing Vitamin Connection solo, you will absorb like the universe and the story more, whereas it's more of a party fun, like light experience when you play it with another person. And I thought, a lot of people are going to play it to the finish. They might want to get more solo content. So you could almost say we hit like a 1.5 or a sequel experience inside of Vitamin Connection, in that once you clear the game, you unlock what we refer to as New Game Pro, where you can play through the game as the character Probiotic, which is this sort of like shadowy, dopey, ninja-esque character. My personal favorite. KG Tang is the voice, and it's just the performance is so good. We were like writing the script for his mode like up until like the day before we were in the recording studio, and some of it like while we were in the recording studio, like writing, like trying to catch up with like, okay, we're gonna do this scene next, like let's hurry up and writing like this dialogue. But I think it worked out in a weird way because it seems just like completely like wacky nonsense, but it actually works and it actually is cohesive. That was a real special treat, and I think that was something that we geared towards the people that are going to play the game solo. So there's a real kind of special experience for people that play it alone as well.
Yeah, wow. I have to dig into that. I think you had mentioned before that you were creating this game as a potential pitch to collaborate directly with Nintendo. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think I know all your games in my brain. I'm like Wonder Momo,
Oh wow.
Shantae. And did you direct the Reboot Camp, the Advance Wars?
Right. I'm the director of Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp with Nintendo.
I thought so. So you have collaborated with Nintendo on a project before. Was this also pitched initially? Vitamin Connection was also pitched as a direct collaboration with Nintendo, where they would like co-own the characters potentially?
Yeah, we proposed it as a collaboration with Nintendo. Ultimately, we developed it ourselves. I think Nintendo was looking for like kind of more big box experiences, which makes a lot of sense for their strategy. But that, like proposing that to them, opened the door ultimately for Advance Wars. And I think we were told in no uncertain terms that like this, like the fact we proposed that is the reason Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp exists today.
Wow. So when we play Advance Wars 1+2, it's hard for me to say the whole title. I normally, when I'm, talking to my kid who loves Advance Wars, I think I emailed you, and he loves Vitamin Connection too, my oldest son. I think I emailed you shortly after he got it, and his brain doesn't usually work in terms of like, I'm going to make a plan. He's got a brain of like, now I'm spinning. Now I'm petting the cat. Now I'm eating 2 ice cream cones at once. Like, we were just playing Mario and Rabbids for the first time. And he was like, this is like Advance Wars, except you kick people. I'm like, so to him, your Advance Wars is like cemented as a core memory game of the whole genre. And it was the first time I saw him like make a plan and see it follow through and realize planning has like advantages in a cartoon world where it's war, but it's treated like fun, almost like a schoolyard competition where people are like, drat, you blew up my planes. Like, you don't ever see anyone get hurt. They just get knocked into the air, which is the only palatable way. It's the only way I'll have him play a war game at this time. I don't want him to associate actual war with fun, but this is so clearly not that. So he did a fantastic job on that. And with Vitamin Connection, when he plays that, he goes back into the just, here I go, Dad. Get ready for trouble. I'm going to play however I want. I'm like, you're freaking me out. And he gets to take some of the control from me in that way. And also, like, say, Dad, how do we do this together? And be willing to learn from me, too. So it's a fantastic game for kids and adults and for couples, I think. My guess was that Nintendo was already working on Snipper Clips, and that is a similar vibe in terms of a collaboration game, and they maybe didn't want to double down on their own and like compete with themselves in that way. But I would highly recommend anyone who likes Snipper Clips as well to check out Vitamin Connection. Now that we're on the cusp of the Switch 2, what would it take to get a Switch 2 Vitamin Connection where you alluded before that it's sort of binary in terms of genders? You could do a whole gender rainbow in Vitamin Connection too. You could do, green, pink, orange. The list goes on, and the ways you could bring vitamins back. What would it take? How could we get those vitamins back in our lives?
Of course, and we do have non-binary characters in Vitamin Connection as it exists, Selenium. So I think we have this Vita Boy, Mina Girl, and I wanted to kind of like offset that by like exploring, hey, there is like other like space for this. So Switch 2, how would we do another Vitamin Connection? I guess if all of a sudden Vitamin Connection got like crazy popular and everyone wanted to buy it, I can convince management at WayForward maybe that it needs to happen. Yeah, please buy Vitamin Connection. I'm excited about Switch 2 though. I can't wait to develop something and share it with everybody for that hardware. So it's I think the world of Vitamin Connection is worth revisiting. I've always had ideas of what I would like to do, because when we made the first Vitamin Connection, invariably there's just gonna be a bunch of ideas that we didn't get to explore to the fullest. And I love rhythm games, so I wanted to incorporate more like kind of rhythm games elements, or do more cool stuff with the music. Like we have a dynamic music system in Vitamin Connection that's very subtle and low key. Like when you fire the vitamin beam in the when you move the capsule ship around, you can hear the music change as you fire the beam if you listen closely. And then if you like stop firing the beam, it'll like cut out that layer of music. And then when you move the ship around, a different layer of music goes on. So you have every song in the game actually has 3 layers of music, and a lot of people don't even notice it until you explain to them, but you feel it subconsciously. And like drawn to it, feels very immersive. But it's the sort of thing where you kind of have to like listen for it or feel it. But it made the music in that game like that was already huge a lot harder to do, because we had to do all these like layers of the soundtrack. But I think there's even more ways that we can explore this dynamic music. And if there was ever a chance to revisit for like a Switch 2 or something like that, I'd love to do more rhythm game elements and something like that.
Yeah. And it has, again, so much of the rhythm game aesthetic from specifically like the late 90s to it. That's always been my sense to it, where again the goal was to not just give you what you thought you expected out of a video game character. Like it's still very family friendly, and I think right in lines with what Nintendo eventually did with Splatoon. I'm sorry, they had already done Splatoon on the Wii U, but the way they kind of pushed it to really feel like it's still family friendly, but there's like a certain neon edge to it, I guess. And Vitamin Connection grasps that perfectly. I could definitely see the characters of Vitamin Connection like crossing over with Splatoon. I have so many Vitamin Connection ideas.
Oh, I love to hear it.
I don't
No,
think...
and the influence that I'm coming from is a lot of, I grew up watching like Cartoon Network shows, so you're going to feel that Cartoon Network essence in there. I grew up playing like 90s rhythm games and stayed in the rhythm game world since then. I was really early on into rhythm games. So any rhythm game I could get on early PlayStation back like to PaRappa the Rapper, I was super into it. I did play Spice World. That was a Blockbuster video rental for me.
That's, we just recorded an episode about Spice World. You were almost on it, but you had a meeting while we were recording it, so we recorded it. And I mentioned you, I plugged you as appearing on this episode. I wanted to ask if you got to make a Spice Girls game.
Yeah.
What would you do with it? Because the Spice Girls game, you rented it. Do you recall if you liked it at all?
It was really rough. I think here's the thing about the Spice World game. It was like, it was 1998. They didn't have a concept of like what a rhythm game was or could be. And it was like really interesting concept, but the execution was rough. So I think I liked it in the sense that I just enjoyed like the presentation, the music. It's got that like that late 90s, early Y2K like art style to it that even back then I appreciated. But yeah, I don't know that I like loved it other than just like aesthetically briefly. There was things about it I enjoyed. If I was gonna do one, I would have to like pull influence from the 1997 Spice World movie because that's a cinematic masterpiece that redefined the meaning of cinema. So it would probably have to have like some like story elements,
Yeah, and an actual rhythm game as opposed to just Spice Girls dolls bouncing around on buttons, because that's all I remember from the actual game. I don't remember a real win-lose state or any sort of urge to try to learn how to play it exactly. It's just sort of a toy of sorts at best.
There was one mode where you're pushing the buttons like to where they're like coming at you from the background. You're pushing the buttons. That's the closest thing to like a rhythm game as we know it now. But it was just like one of like several modes. Like let's look at them dancing and move the camera around. Let's like put like portions of a track together, I think. And so I think just like incorporate some story in there. Like the movie showed us that you don't need to have a cohesive narrative to have fun. So you can have like just like weird snippets of story. They could go on an adventure, Spice Force 5, you can do all the like crazy stuff and like bring it back and it would totally work. So that's just anyway, I totally derailed, but yeah.
Now I want you. Do you want me to try to get the Spice Girls on the phone? Like I'm not a Spice Girls. I'm not connected to those Spice Girls all that well, but I've made things happen before. Like I see that being, and it's such a perfect fit for WayForward.
You need to do the Spice and Vitamin connection.
The Spice and Vitamin. And think about it. Spices go in the body, change things up. Vitamins go in there. It's all in just
itself.
Yeah, I would love that.
I think just like any opportunity to make a game with any IP, we're going to put our love into it. So if it ever was, I don't know if it aligns with Sony's strategy today to bring that back, but if there ever was an opportunity, we would of course make it awesome.
Yeah. That would be wonderful. I was also thinking about you. I played through Elite Beat Agents earlier, and I could see you doing something with that stuff. What an incredible soundtrack. How does it make any sense that they somehow got David Bowie, Madonna, Jackson 5, all licensed like cover songs, but still they got all of that on one DS game published by Nintendo is really, really a surprise.
Yeah, those games are incredible. Owen Dawn and Elite Beat Agents alike are just so much fun. Great music, and you know what? They bring it back. They have the story component to it.
Yeah,
and it's like all over the place. Like I was saying, you don't need this like cohesive like narrative all the way through that's like super strong. As long as like if your moment to moment is awesome and you feel just completely engaged, you can get away with being insane.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what video games allow us to do, as opposed to sitting somebody down in a movie theater where it's like, all right, I know that the red letter media guys or whatever they're called, they're going to tear me apart if there's any plot holes. So I've got to make sure that this all makes sense. With a video game, it's like you are an active participant. And we are going to use that to allow you to jump around and have a wild time where logic, as you know it, you can leave that behind a little bit and enter a video game's logic where anything goes. And again, that's something you've definitely mastered, in my opinion, over the years. And it's part of why I always look forward to what you're working on next. It's Vitamin Connection, though, you implied that it would need more sales to get a sequel. I'm wondering if you have thoughts about, and you know, it's just off the cuff, it's a little bit potentially of an uncomfortable question, so dodge it if you want. I wanted it, and I feel this way about so many WayForward original games. WayForward, hugely successful company, great with working with other people's IP, great at making new games, but the games that WayForward tends to make with other folks' IPs, it just feels like they end up getting seen and talked about a lot, whereas WayForward's original IPs are often more like sleeper hits with super passionate cult followings, but you know, it didn't seem like it sold as well as like River City Girls and blah blah blah. So I'm wondering what it is about Vitamin Connection that, even though it's an amazing game, and amazing games come out all the time that don't do as well as I think they should, why didn't it end up becoming the biggest game WayForward has ever done? Why is that, do you think?
We kind of made a game that emphasizes people coming together in person to play, and then there was a global pandemic where
I remember that now, 5 years ago, 2020, when I no longer felt safe ever leaving the house, and even in the house wondering if I touched a doorknob and was going to end up in the hospital afterwards.
yeah, it was also like a game about like pathogens, and then the final stage is like there's this like global outbreak, and it was like, yeah, I have this like uncanny thing where my games tend to release and then some real world thing happens, or I predict the future with every game I make. I'm not going to go into any further detail on that. Everyone can use their imagination and think about every game.
We talked about at least one game in this conversation that I was so excited for it to come out, and then a terrible event happened that colored the release of that game totally different. And then I waited a year and a half for the game to come out because, and I hate to just make it about me and my video games, I was feeling so terrible about the world event that shook things up, and also was like, I selfishly just wanted to be able to take my brain away from how rough life is with a new game from WayForward and play it. And it did come out, and it was wonderful. It just, as you're saying, you've had a knack for accidentally talking about really tough things before they happen, and in a way that's like sweet and kind, but then won't necessarily land right when people are in the midst of the actual disaster that you accidentally predicted.
Yeah, my most recent game has like an alien invasion, so just a heads up.
Do I not know which game that is? What's the latest game from you, James?
Yars Rising.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, you took the Yars Revenge IP from the Atari 2600 days and turned it into like a beautiful, spooky, but intriguing, and again neon and edgy, but in an inviting way, Metroidvania style action exploration game.
That's right, absolutely. And you know, I tell a lot of people that love Vitamin Connection to play Yars Rising because in a way it's has like a lot of the same elements. It has the same like essence, even though it's a totally different game visually, it's a totally different game thematically, it's a totally different game in gameplay. There's just like things about it, like just the game never shuts up at you. And that's similar to Vitamin Connection in a sense. And also, like, there's this similar emphasis on the music. A lot of same music staff coming back from Vitamin Connection team into Advance Wars, into Yars Rising. So you kind of can feel that sort of eclectic music, dynamic music vibe in this game as well. So if there's people that love Vitamin Connection, I always want to like encourage them, hey, you know, try Yars Rising as well. But yeah, that's the most recent one that I worked on. Total blast to make that game as well.
Yeah. Awesome. We're almost out of time. These darn Zoom calls just self-destruct. People should follow WayForward on Twitter and Blue Sky. I think you're on both there. Should people follow you in those places, James? How should they keep up with what you're doing?
Absolutely. I'm on Blue Sky, but I don't use it too much. I'm not sure how much I'll start using it, but I'm on there. It's just it's like jpop.bluesky or whatever. And then I'm James Popstar on Twitter and Instagram. Please feel free to follow me, and I'll keep you up to date on all the cool stuff that I'm making.
Awesome. Are you working on a game now?
Yeah, I'm making video games.
Like you never take a break? It's just like you were
Yeah,
doing it today already?
I got out of a meeting, came to here, and I'm about to get back to work making games. I never stop it. I never want to stop. This is the best job in the world.
Amazing. So good. So James, any final thoughts on Vitamin Connection? It's gonna be, I hope, available on the Switch 2 because the Switch 2 is backwards compatible. There was once I bought the physical version of it too. It came in a big box. Am I just dreaming that, or was that the Cat Girl without salad box? Yeah, I bought both of those. They're all still boxed up, so you can find physical versions of it too, and pop those in your Switch 2 when that comes out, hopefully later this year. I'm just imagining you just doing Vitamin Connection Switch 2 edition.
And then the Zoom call ended abruptly as Jonathan had many more thoughts and questions about Vitamin Connection that we will have to wait to hear another day. Thanks to our guest, James Montagna, for appearing on this show. You can get Vitamin Connection now on Switch. You've been listening to Yeah, a podcast by Jonathan, Tanya, and Daniel. And oh yeah, you can support this show and everything else we do on the Talking to Women About Video Games podcast feed over at patreon.com/ttwav. Follow us on Blue Sky at ttwav.bsky.social. Thanks for yaing.